You're listening to Startup Universe Talks, a podcast where we meet with startup founders, angel investors, and major stakeholders of the startup ecosystem. They let us in on the do's and don'ts of running a startup, their career story, and the process of succeeding as well as failing. In other words, everything of interest to startup nerds. Startup Universe is a massive network of opportunities for EU tech startup founders, connecting them with the best minds of the EU tech community, with unicorn founders, known investors, and experts. We have brought together European countries to join forces and launch startup programs suitable for their nation's tech founders. ESU aims to give access to opportunity for funding and expansion across EU countries. Welcome to Startup Universe Talks. I'm Mauriza, and today I'm here with Annika Järs, who is working at Startup Estonia. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and hello. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have you here. I think we can begin with, can you tell me more about who you are and your career?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, my name is Annika. I work at Startup Estonia as a startup visa and foreign relations lead. I myself used to live and study in Italy, actually. I have lived also a little bit in Budapest, so living abroad is something that is quite familiar to me. I have a degree in foreign languages for commerce and tourism, and before I started a startup in Estonia about a year and a half ago, I was mainly working in actually event management and tourism field. But I think probably this is why I can very much relate to the foreigners who are now relocating to Estonia with the help of startup visa. So I think I'm very happy to do the job that I am currently doing.
Yes, I can imagine. Can you tell me more about Startup Estonia in general? What is it that you do?
So Startup Estonia is a governmental initiative. It was started back in 2015 with the aim to boost the Estonian startup ecosystem. And since 2017, we have also the Startup Visa program. But what Startup Estonia really does is that we act almost like an umbrella organizations, both for startups, but also are on the government side. So we make sure that the legislative environment is clear. At the beginning of the program, there weren't many investments available yet to startups. So making sure that the investments side is better and making sure that the ecosystem is collaborative. So this is what we mainly do. And then obviously since the ecosystem started booming so much at a certain point, the lack of employers became an increasing problem. So in 2017, just in 11 months, the Startup Visa program was created. So back then, the aim was to help Estonian startups to grow, but then we quickly realized that actually Estonian startup scene is something very attractive, not only for talents, but also for founders. And so since then, now we have the program both meant for founders as well as employees wanting to relocate to Estonia.
Can you tell me more about the visa process that you are working on?
So Startup Visa is basically a program that is meant for non-European startups and employees who want to relocate to Estonia. So as we have built it, it's something slightly different to other countries. It's a two-step sort of process. So the first step is to get the validation from the Estonian Startup Committee. So it's a special committee which consists of 7 different organizations from the ecosystem that evaluate the startups. So it's not some random government official who is evaluating the business ideas, but true experts from the ecosystem. So all of the startups that are considered startups in Estonia, and that's another thing that we have done quite well, I guess, in Estonia is that we have written down a law in our Aliens Act, the definition of the startup. So in Estonia, a startup is a business that is scalable with a fast global growth potential, is based on technology, and is innovative. So essentially, the startup committee evaluates whether or not it is a startup, because the definition can really vary from country to country, and in some countries, every starting business can be considered a startup. But these are the companies that we work with, and then the committee goes on and evaluates also startups that whether or not they have at least an MVP. And after that, this evaluation is done within 10 days. Startups will get this special code, which is valid for 5 years. And with that, they can actually go already to Estonian embassy or police and border guard boards and apply for a visa or residence permit and stay in Estonia or work for Estonian startup.
Okay. Is it hard to get the visa as a startup founder?
Actually, we have kept an eye on, the applications we have received and what is their success rate. And we have to say that the Estonian Startup Committee is really strict in that sense, and it is not very easy to get the status. Only about 20% to 25% of the applicants are actually successful. But regardless of that, the Startup Visa program has helped over 4,000 individuals to relocate to Estonia since the beginning of the program. And almost now slightly over 1,000 founders have received the startup status. So it's still a lot of people, but we are very strict. And I guess the main motivation why the startups are not so successful in receiving the special status is that they're still in a very early phase. So we require at least some traction, some feedback from the first customers, and that's probably why they aren't successful in their first applications. But we give them feedback, and they can apply later when they are more ready.
Okay. Do you feel like it's good that it is a bit challenging to get the visa, or do you think that it would be beneficial to loosen the rules a bit?
I think it's definitely a good thing, because the Estonian startup visa validation is almost like in fact, the first validation to a startup. So we know that those who really receive the status are startups that we believe in, and it is easier for them to then become successful and raise investments and really become active members of the Estonian startup ecosystem. So I think it's a good thing that it's not too easy.
It's like a sign of quality, or like, how should I formulate it? Like a bit of stamp of approval to get the visa.
Absolutely. I think that's the reason also why Estonian startups are so successful and so well valuated in that sense, or Estonian startups tend to have very good reputation elsewhere as well. So it's not very hard for them to raise money or, create trust and keeping that in this way also for others who are trying to enter into the ecosystem, we have to keep a close eye on them.
I would like to talk a bit more about the Estonian startup ecosystem, because it is such a unique thing that is happening in a small European country with both like geographically and population-wise. What is it that has made you so successful?
That's a great question. We get very much. Startup Estonia has always asked this question. But it's true. Estonia is a country of 1.3 million people only. And as of today, we have over 1,300 startups in Estonia. And we have 10 unicorns. And that has brought Estonia to the global top of startups per capita. And we are the second in the world for unicorns per capita as well. Israel still has more unicorns, but I'm sure we will catch up soon. And in Europe, we are, number one in both matters. But I think one of the reasons probably why Estonian startups are so successful is the e-government that we have. So in Estonia, you can do 99% of the state services online. The only thing you can't do in Estonia online is getting married and divorced. And they are now discussing to make it legal to divorce online. So it's really the ease of doing things, the lack of bureaucracy. Declaring taxes takes like half an hour. Starting a business online takes 15 minutes. And so really businesses can focus on their business and not on paperwork and bureaucracy. And then obviously for startups, I think we can really talk about how collaborative the ecosystem is. So I think that's the benefit of being small as well, is that really people know each other, and it's really easy to gain knowledge from founders to founders. We have a very good startup founders society, and they share a lot of knowledge, and it's really basically possible to go out with any of the unicorn founders and ask their questions away and really learn from each other. And then obviously if we look past to one of the early unicorns we had, such as Skype and Playtech, one of the first employees of Skype were later founders of startups such as Wise and Bolt, and which then became unicorns. So the knowledge has really been passed on and is shared happily with the rest of the community and the ecosystem. So very collaborative ecosystem, a lot of support as well. Startup Estonia is managing about 150 support organizations. Well, managing is not the right word. We don't hand money directly to any of the startups, but we do support startups through our support organizations. So startups do have a lot of support as well, not just from the community, but from organizations that are focusing on helping startups. So I think it's a combination of these three things really that has made Estonia such a great place for startups.
In the future, what do you hope that it will look like, and what role would you like Startup Estonia to play in it?
Well, our IT minister has put ourselves this very big goal to have 30 unicorns, I think, in the next by 2025. That's a massive goal to have, but at this point, I wouldn't even be surprised, because when I started at Startup Estonia just a year and a half ago, like I said, Estonia had 5 unicorns at the time, so we have doubled the number of unicorns just in a year and a half. And this year was such a great year again. We are just in May now, but as of 2022, in the first quarter, Estonian startups raised close to 1 billion euros worth of investments, which was the total sum of investments raised last year. So another, record-breaking year is already happening. So I think for the future, I think it's going to be the number one country for unicorns in Estonia. I hope the ecosystem keeps being as collaborative as it is, and Estonia really being a place where these very innovative businesses can grow.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is a very bright future ahead. Especially considering
working on this, definitely. So let's see what the future brings. It's never a good thing to predict, but hopefully we have good things ahead still.
Yes, I would like to ask you: do you see some issues in the startup ecosystem as it is right now, like a lack of diversity or bad trends, negative trends, anything like that you feel needs to change?
One of the biggest challenges the ecosystem is currently facing is really the lack of workers. So the startup sector in Estonia has been growing so fast in the last years that it's been predicted that for the next 10 years, the sector is going to need at least 50,000 new people to work for those startups. And we can see that from Estonian universities, we will have about 15,000 employees who could be recruited to work at those startups. So there's massive lack of IT skilled talent that is currently missing from the sector, and that's something that not only Estonia is currently facing, but many other countries as well. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we are going to have to beat if the sector wants to grow as rapidly. At the moment, we can say that there is about 30% of the of all of the people working in the Estonian startup sectors are from abroad. That's a pretty good ratio, but I think it still can grow. And Startup Visa is definitely a good program to promote that. So this kind of diversity really is very useful for the startups as well, and making it as easy as possible. And then obviously, if we still look at the sector as of today, I think, still there are more men than women in the startup sector, both as founders and as employees. So I think this has to go to a very root phase if we want to solve the issue, and teach the girls differently and encourage them to go to robotic classes or whatnot, and encourage them to go in this sector, which is very risky, and maybe take risks with courage.
Yes. What advice would you give early stage founders who would like to relocate or start their startup in Estonia to get the visa? What is your best advice to them?
So like I said, at the moment, we have seen that many of the startups that apply for the startup visa get the rejection. And the main reason for that is that their startups are still in a very early phase. So my advice to those startups who want to relocate to Estonia is definitely go and check out Startup Estonia's website. And we have created model documents, which are, we have partnered together with different law firms who have created 22 legal documents that are useful to all of the startups and are good to use in the rest of the Europe as well. So not just in Estonia. And, Startup Estonia is requiring for those applicants who want to obtain the startup visa to create, good cap tables and really think out what is their business trying to do. And really test the product. So those startups who already have a prototype which is ready and have some feedback from the clients are good to go and good to apply, but just make sure that the startup already has some traction to prove, basically. Other than that, they can apply as many times as they want. We always give them feedback, and if they're not lucky in the first try, they can always come back and apply in 6 months and have a better result, hopefully.
No, that's good. That if you get the rejection the first time, it's not the end of the world. It's you can keep on applying.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. I think it's very normal that, startups need to keep learning every day and changing their product even quite often. And so I think that's absolutely normal that, they aren't maybe as successful in the first tries.
Yes, absolutely. It's part of the journey as a whole. But it has been such a pleasure talking to you today. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to add to the conversation?
I'm very happy to, be talking to you as well. And I think Estonia is definitely such a small country and maybe isn't on the radar of many, but it's definitely a place to discover. So I recommend to everyone to check out Startup Estonia's website. We have also 3 seasons of podcasts. We have recorded with different founders and players from the ecosystem. So those who are more curious about Estonia and what the startup sector is offering, then definitely check out our podcast. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Yes, I encourage everyone to look up Startup Estonia, and thank you so much for being here. You've been listening to Startup Universe Talks. If you want to know more about us, go to thestartupuniverse.org and follow us on social media. Thank you for listening.